got me a little freaked out. Does that got anybody else a little scared? I'm not good with the scary stuff, so I might have a little nightmares from that. But hey, guys, how's everybody doing this morning? It is so good to see you guys. Didn't our band absolutely crush it this morning? Can we make some noise for them? I'm so thankful for our band, and I'm thankful that you guys chose to make Bay Shore a part of your weekend. I hope you guys are having an awesome weekend. Now, it's Halloween weekend, so I'm going to need to ask you guys some real questions. We're going to get into the deep stuff just right from the start, so I need honesty. Are you guys up for giving me some honesty? Yeah, all right, so I need to know how many of you guys, when you got trick-or-treaters in your neighborhood, you are out on the front porch, you got your porch light on, you got your candy in your costume. How many of you guys are doing that? How many of you guys, when the trick-or-treaters are coming through the neighborhood, you turn your porch light off and you pretend like you're not home? That's me. 100%. We thought that there were trick-or-treaters in our neighborhood last night, and I turned the light off and there weren't even trick-or-treaters. I was just scared. I'm too cheap to buy a giant bag of candy. And if I was going to buy a giant bag of candy, I'm going to be the one eating it. I'm not going to be giving it away to strangers, you know? But did you guys see all of our kids in their costumes this morning? For kids' church, they were rocking some costumes. Now, how many, do we have any adults that wore costumes this morning? Anybody? You guys did. Peanut butter and jelly. I asked that question because 3 years ago was my first Sunday at Bay Shore, and my wife and I, we wore costumes because we thought that it was a costume day for adults, but it wasn't. And it was very, very awkward, and we were the only ones. So if you did wear a costume and you just don't want to raise your hand, I get it. I totally get it. Well, guys, my name's Cotter, and I am the Next Steps pastor here at Bay Shore, and I'm super pumped for the opportunity to hang out with you guys. And something cool is I usually will give a shout-out to my wife, Emily, and our newborn son, Taj, because they're usually online watching with us, but today they're here, which is the coolest. I'm super pumped about that. He's got a little beanie on, which I think kids in beanies is just the coolest thing. But that's super cool. Yeah, that gets me super pumped. But we've got an awesome online family joining us this morning. So can we make some noise for them today? So today we're in the second week of our series, The Haunt Of, and each week we are filling in this blank with normal, everyday things that haunt us. And today we are talking about the haunt of people. The haunt of people, and in particular, the haunt of critical people. Now, how many of you guys have somebody in your life that can be a little bit too critical? Anybody? Anybody at all? Somebody that just loves to point out all the things in your life that you could be doing better? You guys have somebody like that? Now, I don't know about you. Maybe it's somebody in your family that is critical of how you load the dishwasher. I'm that person. I'm going to admit it right now. I am very particular about how the dishwasher is loaded. I think they all need to be scrubbed before they go in, totally clean. That way all the food doesn't mix around. Then you got to put all the cups in a certain way and the plates in. My goal when I'm doing the dishes is to fit every single dirty dish in the whole house into one load. Save some money, that's the way to do it. And maybe you got a neighbor who's a little critical of how you mow your lawn. Maybe you've got a boss who is silent all the time, you never hear from them, but then the second you make a mistake, they're like, hey, I saw that, and I saw that mistake. Now today, we're just going to talk about 4 thoughts about how we should respond to people in our lives who are critical. And we're going to start out by looking at Jesus. And Jesus had some people who were critical of him, which I think is kind of crazy because Jesus was perfect. And even though he was perfect, he still had people that were critical of him. So we're going to start out this morning in 1 Peter. We're going to throw this on the screens this morning. And media team, if we could get the fog turned off, that would be super awesome. So we're going to be in 1 Peter. This is where we're starting out this morning. So this is 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 23. And it says, When they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. So these people, they were saying that Jesus was a friend of sinners. They were saying that he was a false god and that he was a heretic. And they were criticizing Jesus, who's perfect. They were trying to find flaws in the one man in all of history that had absolutely no flaws. And they were trying to make up things to tear him down. And if people criticize Jesus, who's perfect, people are going to criticize us as well. But I think it's so cool how Jesus handled this criticism. This verse says that he didn't retaliate. It says that he didn't defend himself. He didn't complain. This verse says that he chose to entrust himself to his Father in heaven. And what that means is that he wasn't focused on getting justice for himself. He was going to leave the justice to God, and he was going to let him handle it. And so he absorbed all of this negativity that they were bringing against him, and he just let it go. Like, he did not fight back. And there's so much wisdom in what Jesus demonstrates here. He endured unfair and untrue criticism, and he just chose to let it go. And when we're dealing with someone who's critical, sometimes it's best if we just don't respond. Just because somebody says something to us that's critical, it doesn't mean that we have to respond to it. We don't need to drop to their level and start to defend ourselves. If anybody had the right to defend themselves against the critics, it was Jesus. But he just let it go. And I think there's so much value in seeing Jesus' example about how he just chose to ignore these criticisms. He didn't allow it to affect him. He just he didn't use that opportunity to tell them about all the mistakes that they had in their lives. He just let it go. And I think that's so tough. I think it's so hard when people say things about us that aren't true, when people tell us about how they think we could live our life better and share their opinions about how we could change things. I think that's not super easy to let go. And I don't know about you guys, but I usually have the instinct when somebody's super critical where I want to fight back. Like I want to get a little even. I want to be like, oh, you think I need to change that area? Well, let me tell you a couple areas you could change. Does anybody else feel that way? But I think there's so much wisdom in just letting criticism go. And there's a really cool verse about this in Proverbs. This is Proverbs 19, verse 11. And we'll toss this on the screen. It says, "A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense." So it's to our glory when we overlook an offense. And if we have wisdom, we are going to be patient. Now, overlooking an offense, that's not really the same thing as pretending it didn't happen, right? It's not that. When we are overlooking an offense, it means that we're choosing to get over it. We're making that choice that in that moment, we're just going to forgive right there and we're going to move on. It's saying, I know that's not really fair. I know that that's, hurtful, and I could get bitter and I could get upset, but I'm going to choose instead to just let this go and I'm going to move on. And this verse says that the root of overlooking an offense is wisdom that yields patience. It's wise for us when we choose to overlook wrongs that are done to us. We don't need to waste our time getting bitter and getting upset and holding on to all of the negative things that are said to us. We just need to rise above that. We need to show wisdom. We need to show patience and honor God with our response. And look, we can't choose what's said to us. We cannot choose what is said about us, but the one thing that we can always control is our response. We can always control how we respond. Now, how many parents are in the room? Any parents in here? Everyone, except the kids. So if you're a parent, how many of you guys have had somebody say something critical about how you parent your children? Everyone. I've been a parent for not even 3 months, and I've seen plenty of it, I've seen the eye rolls. I've seen the, I didn't do that when I raised my kids, and they turned out just fine. We all have criticism, whether you are a parent or not, but we show wisdom when we demonstrate patience and when we overlook criticism. And what matters the most is not what's said about us, but it's how we act. And when Jesus was insulted and when he was being accused of all kinds of these false things, he didn't feel any need to respond. He didn't speak back against these accusations. He just kept silent, and he chose to trust God to take care of him. And he could do this because his actions spoke for him. Each day, Jesus lived his life loving the people that were around him. And so the way that he lived was the only response that he needed. And so that's one way that we can respond to someone who's critical. We can choose to ignore it and not respond. And then another way is that we can choose to respond carefully. We can choose to respond carefully. And there's a cool story in the Bible about this, about a man named Gideon. And we see this from the book of Judges. We'll put this on the screen. Gideon was dealing with some people that really didn't like his decisions. And so they were kind of coming after him. They were kind of challenging him. So we'll pick up. This is Judges chapter 8, verse 1. It says, "Now the Ephraimites asked Gideon, 'Why have you treated us like this? Why didn't you call us when you went to fight Midian?' And they challenged him vigorously." Now another version of the Bible says that they criticized him sharply. And just for context, this decision that these people were not happy about, this is something that Gideon had prayed about. He sought the Lord in this decision. He felt like he was making the right call, and he followed the direction that God was leading him. But these people didn't care about that. They just didn't like his decision, and then so they were criticizing him and challenging him. And what we see from Gideon is how amazing it can be when we choose to give a very thoughtful and wise response to criticism. And so he had been unfairly challenged, he had been criticized and insulted, but when he responded, he did so with such great humility. The Bible says that when he answered them, he said, "What have I accomplished compared to you?" And then he continued on to say, "What was I able to do compared to you?" And so he's insulted, and instead of going after these people that insulted him, he elevated them. And he just spoke about himself with great humility, and I think this is amazing. You know, when we are insulted or criticized, our instinct is to hurt that person, to tear them down. We think that if somebody's going to hurt us, that we should go after them and we should bring them down, but that's not at all how Gideon responded. He was just calm, and he spoke with such great humility. He didn't defend himself. He didn't fight back. He just humbled himself. And then he complimented the people that were questioning him. And once they heard his response, this is so cool. Once they heard his response, the Bible says that their resentment against him subsided. All of their anger went away because of his humble, thoughtful response. And so there's times when a real answer and a humble response can give someone who's critical an understanding that they didn't have before. It can disarm them, and it can help them to view the situation differently. Now, check out this verse from Proverbs 15. This is Proverbs 15, verse 1. And it says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." We can't control how people talk to us, their negativity and their criticism and their insults, but when we respond gently and when we respond with humility, it's going to take the tension out of that situation. Instead of adding fuel to their anger, we can change the situation with a humble, gentle response. And if you think about Gideon, he had prayed about this decision that he made. He felt like he was making the decision that God wanted him to make. And so when these people came after him and they challenged him, he didn't second guess his decision. He was confident in his process. He was confident that he had sought the Lord, and so he could just be humble. He didn't need to justify his actions. And I think that's so important. We will always have people that are critics of us, people who are critics of the career we choose, of the way we spend our time, of the way we spend our money. But we don't need to make everyone happy. We don't need to justify our decisions to people who are critical of us. What matters is that we seek God in our decisions, and that we're humble when we respond to those who criticize us. You know, every time that somebody criticizes us, it's an opportunity for us to respond in love. It's an opportunity for us to use that situation to reflect God's love to them. You know, Gideon, he responded in love. even when he was being criticized, even when he was being questioned, and that's our model. We can respond in love to the people who criticize us, and that's how we reflect Jesus to them. So we can respond to criticism by not responding. We can choose to respond with a wise, thoughtful response, and sometimes we can listen to criticism and we can make a change. Sometimes we can listen to criticism and we can make a change. There's times when the person who's being critical of us is really coming from a place of love, and they're actually sharing something with us that we need to hear, something that we can learn from. And there's a cool story about this later on in Proverbs 15, so we'll put this on the screen. It says, if you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. If you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. So listening to constructive criticism, that makes us wise. When someone comes to us and they have good intentions and they are trying to build us up, their criticism can open our eyes to things that we don't see in ourselves. Areas that we need to improve, habits we need to break, things that we need to clean up. So there's times when people can bring things to us, and it can be so beneficial for us to listen to them. And look, there is criticism that's meant to harm, and there's criticism that's meant to heal. And the harmful kind, that's something we can just let go in one ear, out the other. That's not worth our time. It's not worth focusing on. But when someone brings criticism to us that's meant to heal, that can be a huge benefit to us. And usually that comes from people that we trust, people that we respect, people that are close to us and who know us well. And those are the words that we need to listen to. And I think we all know who those people are in our lives. And look, it's great to have people around us that praise us, but what's important is not that we just have people surrounding us that always tell us how amazing we are. It's important that we also have people around us that are encouraging, but they'll tell us when we're out of line. They'll tell us when we've got some things in our lives that we need to clean up. And I think we all need those people in our lives. I remember back when I graduated college, one of my first jobs was to be a youth pastor at this small church. And my college degree was not a youth pastor degree. I don't know if that exists, but that's not what it was, if that does exist. My college degree was media production. So I was not qualified to be a youth pastor at all. And I am pretty much 100% certain that the only reason I got that job was because I was the only one who applied. The interview consisted of, who would you compare yourself to in the Bible? And so I was like, I don't know. And they were like, okay, you can have the job. So I got this job, and I just, I did not feel qualified at all for it. And I was leading this group of students. There were like 5 to 10 kids, and these were the most patient kids in the entire universe because I had no clue what I was doing. And so at this time, Emily and I were engaged, so she was there most nights helping me out. And this one night, I didn't have a lot of confidence in what I was teaching most nights, but this one night, I had prepared well, I did everything, and I felt like I crushed it. Like, that feeling when you've done something, you're just like, yeah, I did that. That was me. I am the one who was amazing in that moment. That's how I felt. Like I prepared well. I felt like I communicated it well. And so I was feeling awesome about myself. And so afterwards, I asked Emily, I was like, hey, it's pretty awesome, wasn't it? What'd you think of that? And this was her response. She said, not the best. No joke. That was her response. And if you were wondering, not the best, that's not really what I was aiming for that night. But that was her response. That was her evaluation. And I was like, I was hoping that you would say, you were like Peter when Jesus ascended into heaven, and then Peter spoke to the crowds, and they were going crazy. And instead I just got, not the best. And so I said, why? I prepared well. I communicated well. I thought it went so good. And she was like, you might have. But the only thing I could focus on all night was how you were clicking your pen the whole time you were speaking. And so apparently I had this pen, and the whole time I was talking, I was just clicking it, nervous clicking my pen. And that is not criticism that I wanted to hear in that moment. I was not asking Emily how I did so that she could give me feedback. I was asking her so she could say, you're the best person that's ever taught a youth group in the world. That's what I was looking for. But that feedback was so good, and it was so important. And now you will never see me on stage within 10 feet of a clickable pen. I have removed that temptation from my life, and I've said no to it. But isn't it true that the people who are close to us, they can see flaws in our life that we're just totally oblivious to? And when they're loving and when their goal is to build us up, that criticism is so good for us. It helps us to grow. It helps us to eliminate weaknesses. And so let's toss this verse from Proverbs 15 back up on the screen. So it says, if you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. If you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. And these verses say that if we listen to correction, we're going to grow in our understanding. We're going to be wise. And when we're humble, and when we acknowledge that we have room to grow, then we're going to be open to hear loving words of criticism. We're going to listen when people that we respect tell us that we need to cut out harmful habits, or cut out harmful attitudes, or destructive behaviors, or other things that are holding us back. Now, how many of you guys, when you leave church today, you're going to go home and you're going to watch football? Anybody? Yes, that is 100% what I'm going to do. That's what I do every Sunday. I go home, I grab Taj, and then we go to my parents' house, and I just spend the entire day eating pizza and drinking Mountain Dew and watching football. It is the best. There is nothing like Sundays during football season. And so I love Sundays, and I just love football like so much. It's probably unhealthy, but I love football. And I'm also an Eagles fan. Are there any other Eagles fans in here? That's what I'm talking about. We had our welcome lunch last week, and it was amazing, but the best part was that like 90% of the people in the room were Eagles fans. It was so awesome. But I love the Eagles, and I love them, but I also just love football. Like, no matter who's playing, I just love to watch the sport, and it's kind of embarrassing to share this, but during the week, I listen to like 10 to 12 hours of football podcasts every single week. When I am trying to load the dishwasher with every dirty dish within a mile of my house, I'm listening to football podcasts. When I'm mowing the lawn, just listening to people talk about football. And so I love listening to football podcasts. And something I think is so cool about the NFL is how the players and the coaches are so receptive to criticism. You know, every week after a team finishes up their game, the next day they go into the building and they sit down and they review their mistakes from the day before. And then they point out their errors, they write it down, and then they make a plan for how they're going to eliminate those mistakes and how they're going to be better in the next game. And I just think that's so neat. They're not offended when somebody points out their mistakes. They're not offended when somebody says, this is something that you did wrong. They're just focused on being the greatest that they can possibly be. And so they know in order to do that, they need to eliminate their mistakes. Now, we've got this verse. Let's go to the next slide of this verse. It says, if you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. When we reject discipline, when we ignore the people who lovingly, helpfully point out mistakes in our lives, then we're only going to harm ourselves. We're holding ourselves back from greatness when we do that, and we're holding ourselves back from being the best that we can be. And really, that attitude of ignoring loving feedback, it's just pride. You know, it's pride in us that says that we don't need to be corrected because we already have it all figured out, or nobody else knows better than me, so they shouldn't be telling me what I need to do differently. But when we listen to correction, then we're going to grow in our understanding. When we're humble and when we're open to hearing from others about how we can improve, that's when we're going to grow. So when someone that we trust comes to us and they come in love and they point out things that we're struggling with, it's important for us to take the time to evaluate it and to look at our lives and see if we can grow in that area. And there's so many areas of my life that I can look to where someone has come to me and they brought constructive criticism and they said, hey, I think you can do this better. And there's so many areas of my life that I feel like I've grown in because I've listened to that. You know, I've got people in my life that I can trust, whether it's my wife or my family or some close friends, people that have shared with me things that I needed to address, and now I'm a better spouse, and I'm a better employee, and I'm a better friend because I've listened to their constructive criticism. And look, we all have room to grow. We constantly have room to grow, and when we have the humility to receive words of instruction from people that we trust, we can move forward and we can make improvements in our lives. And so how do we respond to criticism? Well, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we respond carefully. Sometimes we listen and we make a change. And our fourth point today is that we always work to guard our heart. We always work to guard our heart because we don't want to be the one who's critical. We don't want our words. We don't want our heart to be tearing other people down, to be pointing out their flaws and making people feel bad about who they are. That's not what we want. We want our words to be building others up. We want our words to be encouraging people and praising them. Check this out. This is Proverbs 12. We'll put this on the screen. Proverbs 12:18. It says, "There is one whose foolish words cut like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." Words that cut, words that harm people, the Bible says those are foolish words. And those are foolish because there's no love there. There's no desire to help someone or to encourage someone. There's nothing loving or beneficial about criticizing people just for the sake of bringing them down. And I think a lot of times when we're critical of other people in that way, I think it usually comes from a place of jealousy or a place of pride. Maybe it's we see their nice house and we see their nice car and their nice clothes and we just think, man, I just want to bring that person down a little bit. Or maybe we just are filled with so much pride that we think it's okay to talk bad about other people. And look, we can try to reframe it another way. We can just say that, I'm just opinionated, right? And that sounds a little bit better, but no matter how we frame it, whether we say we're opinionated or we're critical or we're negative, it doesn't matter what we call it. If we're bringing people down with our words, then we're using our words foolishly. And for me, when I'm struggling with this, it's because I'm focused on the wrong stuff. I just get so focused on the wrong things. I can get so distracted by the negative that I just miss amazing things that are right in front of me. I could be looking at a beautiful sunset and I could have some mosquitoes around and I'd only be focused on the mosquitoes. I could be driving to the beach, 80 degrees, sunny, and all I'm focused on is the traffic. Is anybody else like that? You just let the negatives kind of have a little bit too much influence. When I get focused on those negatives, I just totally miss great things. And Emily's so good for me with this. Whenever I get caught up on the negatives and she notices it, she'll ask me to say 5 things that I'm grateful for, 5 things I'm thankful for. And I'm usually not happy when she says that. I usually say, well, the first thing that I'm grateful for is that I only have 4 more of these left. And so I'm usually not happy about it. But it always helps me, and it always helps to change what I'm focused on. It gets my focus off of all the negative things, and it reframes it so I'm focused on the positives. And I share that because I think that's what we need to do with the people around us when we become critical. Instead of focusing on how we think someone could live their life better and how they could make better decisions, we need to stop ourselves and we need to focus on positive things about that person. What are some ways that they excel? What are some of their strengths? What are some things that we can praise about them? And that's my challenge for us this week. And man, I say us in capital letters because I am very, very much included in this. When we want to criticize someone this week, let's stop ourselves and let's find 5 things that they do well. 5 things that we admire about them. 5 strengths about them. Let's look at this verse one more time. It says, "There is one whose foolish words cut like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." If we're wise with our words, then our words are going to bring healing. If we're using our words the way that God intended, then they're going to be building others up. We're going to be cheering people on and encouraging them. And when we get tempted to point out someone's flaws, let's just take a step back. Let's focus on their strengths. Let's find ways to encourage them and to build them up. We choose whether we are going to focus on someone's flaws or whether we're going to focus on their strengths. And there's a really cool verse that I want to show you guys. This comes from 1 John verse 3. It says, or chapter 3, it says, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that's what we are." Look, when God looks at us, he isn't looking at our flaws. He is looking at us as his children. He looks beyond our flaws to see our worth. And how many of you guys know that we've got flaws, right? Turn to the person next to you and say, "I know that you have flaws," right? But we all have flaws. You guys think that everyone has flaws. You guys are bought into that. Look, we all have flaws, and think about this. God can see all things. God knows all things. God is very much aware of all of our flaws, all of our shortcomings, but he overlooks that to call us his children. And we become children of God when we accept his love, when we accept his forgiveness, when we live for him. And when we live for Jesus, even though we make mistakes, we're still his children. And if God can look beyond our flaws, then we can look beyond the flaws of the people around us. And I want to close with two thoughts this morning. And the first one is, if you came here and you haven't accepted God's love, maybe you think that God can't overlook all of the areas that you struggle. Maybe you think that God can't overlook your mistakes or your flaws. Well, I want to tell you, that could not be further from the truth. God looks at you with so much love that he sent his son to die to take away the burden of your mistakes. God, he's not waiting for you to be mistake-free. He's not waiting for you to have all of your flaws worked out. He's just waiting for you to accept his love and his forgiveness. And when we accept his love, when we accept his forgiveness, and when we live for him, he sees us as his children. He looks beyond our flaws because of his great love for us. And here's my last thought this morning. It's so easy for us to fall into this cycle of negativity and just become so critical of the people around us. But this week, let's make it a point to be a voice of positivity to the people around us. Let's build each other up. Let's encourage each other. Let's use our voice to show the people around us God's love. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for how much you love us, and I thank you that you can overlook our mistakes. I know that I make so many mistakes, and I have so many flaws, and it's amazing that you would overlook all of that to see me as your child. And I pray, God, that we would just be aware of how much you love us. I pray that would just sink in, and we would realize that you care so deeply about each one of us, no matter what our flaws are, no matter what our weaknesses are. And I pray, God, that we would see how you love us and how you view us. And I pray that we would view the people around us in that way. I pray that we would overlook the flaws of the people around us to encourage them and to praise them and to point them towards you. I pray that we would be people who encourage the people around us and praise the people around us. And I pray all this in your name. Amen.